Hello and welcome to my channel. This video is about managing meltdowns in 5 stages. Firstly, let's look at why meltdowns happen. What causes them? If you've ever witnessed an autistic person having a meltdown, you'll know that outwardly the person can appear significantly and sometimes unreasonably distressed, violent towards themselves or others, and in some cases as if they're not in control of their emotional or physical responses. But what's happening on the inside? Meltdowns are more often than not caused by sensory overload. Some experts even go as far as to state that every meltdown is a result of sensory overload. Sensory overload is defined as when a person's senses receive more information than their brain is able to process and organize. This triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response, which is the natural reaction that humans have to situations that feel life-threatening. Common catalysts for sensory overload include changes to routine and unpredictable situations, which can shock the sensory system, fatigue, noisy or busy environments that are overstimulating, and sensitivities to things like touch, textures, tastes, and smells. Specific triggers will of course be unique to every autistic person. Sensory overload is something that can build slowly over a number of hours or even days, or when there's a combination of triggers, it can happen rapidly, sending an autistic person spiraling into a meltdown in a relatively short amount of time. Autistic people have reported that meltdowns can feel painful, deeply uncomfortable, and unpleasant, while also being accompanied by feelings of embarrassment, humiliation, and self-consciousness, both during and after the event. It's important to note that a meltdown is not a tantrum. There are several differences. A tantrum usually occurs in toddlers and young children, often happens suddenly in response to a child being denied something that they want, and aims to attract attention in order to acquire something, usually from a caregiver. Children usually outgrow tantrums as they naturally mature and develop alternative methods of communication. In contrast, a meltdown can occur at any age, often follows signs of anxiety that are unique to the individual, is most often caused by sensory overload, and while it's not for the benefit of an audience, it is a communication that an autistic person is overstimulated. A meltdown is not something that autistic people outgrow, but identifying and minimizing triggers and putting in place assistive strategies can help to reduce the occurrence of sensory overload and resulting meltdowns. What can you do during a meltdown, particularly if the person melting down is an autistic child? Stage 1. Observe and act. Firstly, can you prevent a meltdown? This is a difficult question and depends on the situation. Being on the lookout for sensory overload is your best chance to avoid a meltdown, or at least delay it until you can get to a safer, more private environment. At the first signs that a child is becoming overstimulated, as much as possible try to immediately remove known triggers. For example, limit noise, reduce bright lights, or relocate the child to a quieter place and encourage the use of calming tools like visual supports, music, or favorite objects. Stage 2. Safety first. If a child is melting down, first and foremost, keep them and others safe and as much as possible, preserve the child's dignity. This could mean withdrawing siblings or peers from the situation, holding a child's hands if they're being violent towards themselves or others, and ensuring any obstacles that could hurt them are removed. Stage 3. Stay calm and limit your language. The last thing you want to do is add to an autistic child's sensory overload during a meltdown. By staying calm and in control, you can be the light in the storm that they can keep their eyes on until the meltdown subsides. If you can, get down on their level and give them your full attention. Tell them that it will be okay and that you know they're upset, and try to leave it there. A meltdown is not a teachable moment. The only thing that happens during a meltdown is a meltdown. Stage 4. The aftermath. An autistic child will likely be exhausted after a meltdown, as may caregivers. If appropriate, offer cuddles, kind words, and whatever, within reason, typically helps the child self-regulate. This might be time outside, a favourite activity, object or book, a quiet space, or a particular food. For my daughter, it's time with her favourite books, listening to music, and crunchy crackers. Stage 5. Reflect, plan, and profile. Now is the time to minimize future meltdowns by identifying a person's personal triggers and putting adjustments in place. I like to do this in the form of a one-page chart or profile so that carers in different settings can be empowered to support the child. Each meltdown that a child experiences can be an opportunity to gather further information about their sensory system and profile. Firstly, ask yourself what happened in the lead up to the meltdown. What was the environment like in terms of noise, light, and busyness? Was the situation familiar or new and unpredictable? Was the child exposed to any particular textures, tastes, smells, or physical contact? When did the first signs that the child was becoming overstimulated appear? What were they? Could you see that the child was becoming anxious? Have they ever melted down in a similar situation? Is there a pattern that you can see? Next, identify supports and adjustments that help the child regulate, remembering that these can be useful before and after a meltdown, but not during. Adjustments could include things like noise-cancelling headphones, sunglasses, a cold drink, crunchy foods, social stories to increase predictability, visual supports such as schedules, timetables, and first-then charts, favourite fidgets or objects, visual timers, and providing a safe, quiet, calm space at settings or events where sensory overload is likely. There may even be times where you might choose to avoid certain situations altogether because minimizing triggers is simply not possible. Know that sometimes, no matter what you do, sensory overload is unavoidable and a meltdown inevitable. Remember that it's not a tantrum, and if you've made it to the end of this video, it's because you obviously care and are already taking steps to better understand and support autistic people with meltdowns, and for that, I thank you. If you have any hot takes or comments about meltdowns and how to manage them, I'd love to read them below. Until next time.